From the east to southern Africa, following weeks of speculation and numerous articles about his mischiefs, the Department of Correctional Services has confirmed that Thabo Bester, also known as the Facebook rapist, is still alive. The DSS further confirmed Bester's escape from custody on May 3rd, 2022, after it was believed he had committed suicide by setting himself alight in his cell. This is according to Department of Correctional Services spokesperson Singabako Nkumalo. Nkumalo said Bester's death through suicide was staged as the diseased body found in his cell was that of another individual while he has been on the loose for months. Bester was later spotted shopping in Sandton months after his alleged death. The Department of Correctional Services and the police have said investigations regarding the Thabo Bester matter are still ongoing. Gauteng Communications Coordinator for Action Society, Shepu Mekwa, joins me on the news for more on this. Thank you so much for joining us on News Now.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers.
Good afternoon. So this case is one of the unbelievable prison breaks. Let's start with South Africa's criminal justice system. When something like this happens, we understand it happened last year in May, and it's only last week the Department of Correctional Services and police are now asking the public to assist in finding Bester. What picture does it paint for the criminal justice system?
Well, it paints an appalling picture, to say the least, and on many fronts. On the police front, on Department of Correctional Services, and on Home Affairs. And I'll come to that a bit later. But, I mean, if you think about it, on the 3rd of May, this incident happened. And it is after numerous sightings of Thabo Bester that the Department of Correctional Services was roped into action. This is appalling, to say the least. Secondly, when this individual subsequently passed away in prison after burning himself, when was the DNA test done? This is so frustrating, because it tells us that if the DNA process was started back in May of 2022, then we are looking at the results that are only coming out now, which means our police minister has to answer to the DNA backlog we have been complaining about for so many months. Secondly, it is now reported that he actually isn't Thabo Bester. So we now need to find out who this individual actually is. So it is appalling on so many fronts. Department of Correctional, the police service, SAPS, and Home Affairs itself.
All right, now, Shep is still looking at this particular situation. Thabo Bester is supposed to be under the government prison. So what are the circumstances that make a prisoner who is supposed to be at a government prison to end up at a private-run prison? Tell us more about Thabo Bester's case.
Well, in the South African context, we've got issues with overcrowding in prisons. So in many instances, you'll find that the different departments will source help from private partnerships. So they have a contract signed with the particular prison that Thabo Bester was hosted in, just outside Bloemfontein, for a 25-year period. So it's not that alarming, because we do have an issue with overcrowding in the prisons. And that is how this came about, that Thabo Bester would then be hosted in such a facility. Look, it is a maximum security prison, so there is nothing alarming in that sense. What is alarming is the fact that he would then have had help from prison officials, because how would he have pulled all of this off by himself?
And talking about this, all this excesses from Thabo Bester, what also really stands out is that a convicted murderer running a multi-billion business and meetings live from his prison cell that itself remains a mystery on how one in a maximum prison can benefit from crime. You talked about some of the prison people being accomplices to the matter. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, how can he actually have this live meetings, and what has been done concerning this?
Look, according to Correctional Services Act, sentenced offenders are not allowed to work or conduct business on their own account. But illicit businesses do run in our prison, and that is actually not uncommon. We've got issues with the illicit trade of cell phones and drugs, often aided by prison officials. And it's a known problem. Nonetheless, it is troubling an inmate serving a life sentence from a maximum security prison and the second largest private prison in the world was able to run such an elaborate business from behind bars. I mean, it is astonishing a convicted violent sex offender should have free access to the internet. We know that there are some inmates who are allowed laptops because they are studying and so on. So Thabo Bester would then have been allowed because, as I understand it, he was studying with, I think, Damlin at the time. So he would have had access to a laptop. And this is how he was able to then run his illicit businesses.
Okay, finally, Tepi, I mean, what we see right now is that he is still alive and widely still doing what he knows best. Now, how much of it is a danger in South Africa? And do you believe that the Department of Correctional Services will do what is needed to apprehend him?
Well, they've now opened a case with the SAPS. And the SAPS is on the manhunt. They've requested the public to be on the lookout. I think what is worrying is the danger to the public, because as we speak, the person who blew the whistle on the pictures that you've seen circulating, of him in a shopping center and so on, this whistleblower his life is now in danger, which is an issue in the South African context, because whistleblowers get hunted and either disappear or die or whatever the case is. So it is a very dangerous time for the public. I would urge then that anybody who has a sighting of him contact the SAPS directly, because they are now in charge of this particular manhunt. But it is a very, very dangerous situation for the public at large.
All right. Thank you so much, Tepi, for shedding so much light on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.